In this tutorial, we want to make a fractal tree generator. You can see that I can increase the number of these branches and also the length of the trunk here, the angle. As you can see, we can update the results and also the angle, the changing of the angle, which I will explain in this tutorial, and also the length of these branches and how they're going to change according to each step, which we can change. And also we can increase or decrease the number of steps. For example, if I just put this to 1, you can see it's going to divide by 2 and 2 again. And if I increase that, it's going to increase the number of the branches, which we can also control. This here, you can see it. There's also a number which we can give to the pipes. You can see we can change that and make that different thickness for those lines, which will I will explain at the end of this tutorial, so be sure to watch the tutorial till the end. Okay, before we get started, if you're new to our channel, welcome, and remember to subscribe because we have weekly tutorials. And now let's get started from scratch. What I want to do is let's just go to the perspective view and use this anomaly plugin. So when you install it, you can just put it into the file, special folder and component folder. And when you restart your Rhino and Grasshopper, you will find it here, the anomaly, which I can click. And there are two kinds of loops you can produce. You can see there is a classic and there is a fast. So what I want to do is to use this classic because it's going to show you the animation, and it's going to have a little bit of a delay in producing the results. So let's just do that by producing a classic loop start and end, and let's put the bifocals plugin. And now what I want to do is to connect the top. If you also don't know about the anomaly and you want to know the basics, I have a tutorial. I will put it up here. You can watch it and also learn how the basic works, but perhaps you can also learn from this tutorial because it's not really complicated. First of all, we have to connect the top, and let's get started with the start of this tree is going to be with this line, so we can do that before the loop. I'm going to go to the curve and use this line SDL, start direction length. So let's right click and set this point to 0, and the direction is going to be the Z, so it's in the Z direction. You can see it's a small one. And now we can just give a complete number for the length, maybe between 2 and 25. And let's get rid of this number slider thing, which will reduce the length. Okay, so this can help us. Let's increase the number of the maximum we can have and go to the next step. So this is the line we want to enter the loop. I'm going to change this data into the tree, or we can say branch. Naming this is going to help you to understand what's happening in the loop, so we know it's the branch. When I give this line here, what I want to do is to let's talk about the logics. Here, for example, we have to find the plane of this line, and the technique I'm going to use, you can use also another way to produce the branches. I assume that this is the plane, right? We can produce an arc, which can be controllable. And for example, we can say from here to here, this is going to be the arc, and then draw the branches like this. So again, that's going to happen for this one. It's going to have an arc, and again, we can have branches, right? It's going to be controllable there. At the end of this tutorial, we can also control the length and the angle. So for now, what I want to do is to say we just have a 45 degrees angle. So I'm going to just say angle. That's going to help you to understand what's happening. So first we have to write an algorithm to find the plane here. What I prefer to do is to go and connect the similar parameter for this is a curve, so I'm going to give this to a curve. And now, for finding this, we can go to the curve section and use this point on curve tool. This is going to help us to extract the point on the curve, which is going to be at the end of this for each of those branches. And for making the plane, we can go to the vector and use this construct plane to make the plane. It's really easy. You have to give the origin of the plane and the x and the y. So I'm going to just select this. The origin is going to be this one. The x direction can be the same as this curve. So if this is the curve, this is going to be one of those vectors. Let's just give that to the x. And let's go to the view like this. We can have this. What I want to do is to also flip this x in this direction, so we can just right click on it and write expression minus x, and here we have this x direction. So you can see that this is the plane which will help us to make the arc. The reason I flip this is because if I have this x direction in this here, making the arc is going to be more complicated, so I just made that really a little bit easier. So let's go to the next part. We're going to go to the curve and primitive and use this arc thing here. I'm going to make it like this. This is the plane. We can control the radius, which can help us to define the branch. So let's just say maybe between 2 and 120. Let's say name this length. I'm just going to explain this because this is going to make it easier. So for example, we can give this to the radius. You can see it's going to make this bigger or smaller. Maybe just 20 is fine. Okay. And increase this length a little bit so it will give us a better project. Here we go. Okay, so we can just change the radius of this arc so you can see the results on the plane. And to make this happen, assume that we want to make this the degree of the branching, right? It's going to be like 90 degrees. So we have, let's just type this, 90 degrees here. And then this is going to be the alpha, or the degree we want to have this. So we're going to make this happen on the angle here. And I'm going to say pi. So remember, this is going to be pi divided by 2. Let's just make this clear by giving it panel, and plus the angle we want. So for example, this is the angle. And before we connect this, remember this is in radians and this is in degrees, right? So we can't connect that. We have to make a complete tool called radians, which will convert this from degrees to radians. So I'm going to do that by using the rad, R-A-D, and you can see that this converts an angle in degrees to radians. So we can just give this here and add this up. So this is going to be the start of the angle. Let's just make this by going to the math section and using this construct domain, make a complete controllable domain. So this is the start of the degrees. We just actually made this as the starting point. Let's just draw this one. Okay. Again, to make this one happen exactly like on the second branch, what we have to do is to make this like, let me just make this with red, like this degree minus this one, right? So this is like 1.5 pi, right? And then minus this one. So we can do that. That's not really hard. We can just say 1.5 pi. Just copy this radians, minus this, and then give this to the angle. Okay, so here we can see that we have a mistake here. What was that? Okay, so that's not the correct one. 0.5, half of the pi. Sorry for that. So remember that was from 0.5 added to that degree, and then 1.5 pi minus that degree. So now just see how easy it is. I can control that angle and control the length This is really beautiful and controllable in Grasshopper. What we have to do is to draw the lines. So I'm going to go to the curve and connect this line tool from the center of this plane, which is this point, to the points we want to make on this arc. Okay, if you want to make this with 2 branches, that's going to be simply the start and the end of this arc. But let's just get this a little bit more complicated or better to control. So what I want to do is to divide it into, if we want 1 segment, it's going to give the start and the end. So let's just make a division from 1 to 4. I'm going to type this divide, and remember we can control that. So if I divide this curve into 1 segment, it's going to give this second and the start and the end. If I put that to 2, it's going to give us 3, and we connect that, it's going to give us the branches, right? So this is how we can control. This is the angle, and this is the length. We can turn off the arc here, and now what we have to give to the branch of this loop end is exactly what we have here, which is lines. So I'm going to give that to the branch. Okay. Before we check the loop, remember you have to increase the repeat. That means repeat that again and again to see the problems. So what I want to do is to just say maybe repeat these 2 times. We can say from 0 to 5, and for the 0 it's like this. If I go to 1, okay. You can see that there is a problem with the branching, I guess. What I have to do is, usually in most of the recursive algorithms, is that you have to make the groups. So this curve has to be the base group of that tree, basically the fractal tree generator. So what we have to do is to right click and graft this. If you don't know about graft, you can watch up a tutorial here which is related, and I've explained about how data tree works, and this is going to help you to manage your fractal tree generator. So that is how we can basically play. You can see that we can increase that. Let's just turn everything off. The most important thing part of the loop is to right click here and remember to record the data and connect a curve to the output. So before we want to get the results, we double click on this to reset the results. We had this line, so you can see how it's going to help us. Remember that by changing, you have to just double click on this and get the results, which I will explain how to make that a little bit more automatic. So when you change this angle, it's going to change exactly as this. You see that when I change the angle, it's going to give us immediate results. That is because we had added to this loop. So remember, if you don't add that to the loop, you have to just double click to see the results, which is not good, and we're going to do that in the next step. So you can see that the logic is really easy to understand. Now the second part is to make this a length and angle inside this loop. So what I want to do is to add a length, an angle, and a division. So let's just do that. Length, angle, and division. You can just say, and first of all, this is the length. So let's just bring that into the loop. Because it's a number, I'm going to go to the params menu, the first menu, and select the number. Remember, this is an L, length, and bring it back to here, to the radius. Okay. And we have to take back this L into the end of the loop. So what I want to do is to just simply take that back. Double click on this one to make the loop okay. The next one is the angle. So I'm going to just put this here. Another number. This is an angle. And remember, we gave it to here and here. And again, we have to bring that back, because if we don't want to change the angle, we can give that to the angle. And the last one is division. So I'm going to give that to the divide. Remember, this one is a number, integer, so I'm going to use an integer. And where does this go? Here goes the count. We have to bring that back to the division. Okay, now just check this out. It's going to help us to see that immediately after changing the angle, the division. That's really easy to manage. Okay, to make that fractal, we can also increase the number of this and maybe length, but this is going to intersect because all of those lengths are the same. We have to make that a little bit smaller. Remember, if you decrease the number, just double click this, but if you increase it, it will automatically add to the project. So let's just see that. Okay, that was the second part, to make that change immediately. You can see it here. Okay, the next part is to give this a control on two things. One, the first one is the length. So if this is the L, for example, let's go to blue. This one should be like L multiplied by something. So it's going to make it smaller or bigger, right? Because we want to make it smaller, perhaps we have to give it a smaller number than 1. And what I want to do is to make a number slider between 0.1 to maybe 0.99 and name that L change. It's a multiplication, so we can just add this here and name it to L star, maybe. Name it here L star. Add another one here, L star, and let's bring this inside. The most important thing about multiplications, so we talked about the angle, length, and division, is that this can help us to change the loop. So first of all, the multiplication is always going to be the same, so we can just connect that onto the L by this one, right? So we can simply just connect that straight to the output. So that's the tip you have to learn. And the next one is to multiply that by the length. So we can just take this number. You can also use this number and put it back into the multiplication. Okay, so we have to multiply that to the radius. I'm going to multiply that with the math and then connect that to the radius. So that's going to multiply each time with the length. Just double click this one. Okay. So you can see that this is changing the length list, increase the steps. Okay. You can see that's basically changing the length by multiplication. We have like this length multiplied by this one. And we have to also change something here, and that is the length. What happened? It's also giving all the length back to the loop, so I have to give this multiplication back to the loop here to the L. That's the problem we had. So remember, before that we just gave straight the L to the L, so it didn't change. Now we have to say each time use the smaller L to the L. So remember, the multiplication is going to go straight, but the multiplication of that length, which is a smaller one, has to go to the L of the tree. I hope that you understand this. So it's just a little bit complicated, but just double click this and see the results. That's really cool. And you can see that we are playing with this one. We can change the length, angle, the division. That's really cool. And we can increase the number of the steps. And maybe we don't want that to be too small, maybe bigger. And that's really beautiful and cool. You can see how easy Grasshopper uses a fractal tree generator with just simple of tools, just using the Anemone plugin. And now what we have to do is to go to the change of the angle. So I'm going to just copy paste this, Control C, Control V, and say angle change. Add another one, so it's like A star. And go to here again, we have this A star. We have to give it here. So remember, you have to make a number. We talked about this, that the multiplications are going to go straight out, but it has to affect the angles which we had here. So what we can do is, this is the angle, to bring this down. And before we give it to this degrees, we're going to multiply that and then give it to these 2 radians. And then we have to also give that multiplication to the angle. Remember, we have to make that smaller and smaller and smaller as we go forward. Okay, that's the trick, and you can see how beautiful it will change also the angles by changing this number. I think that you can also give that a bigger number maybe, but that's going to make something like that's going to break the degrees, so just put that to like 1. Now we can say that's 0 also, because we don't want to change that angle, so it's going to just have perhaps we have to don't give that 0 exactly, just a little bit up. You can see that's going to work, okay? Because 0 is going to ruin everything. Everything is going to be 0. And now you can see how easy it is to use Grasshopper to make a fractal tree, a generator fractal tree. And now you can see that I can't just play with these. That's really beautiful. Angles. And let's increase the angle and put it into a length also. We have to just play with these 2 things here. And if we increase the division, remember to just play with this multiplication, the angle, the multiplication of the angle. It's going to give you better results. And the multiplication of the length, both of them are going to help you to get the results. That's it. So that is the steps you have to take to make that fractal tree. I love Grasshopper because it's really easy to work with. You can see how easy the loop has been. We have also worked this in our course, a 3D tree, I think. That's a really complete 3D tree, which is exactly working instead of the plane on this. Okay, let me show you. Instead of putting the plane on this part, we're going to put that on the a perpendicular frame. So you can make that a 3D, but it's going to be a little bit more complicated. So I selected to make this tutorial about a 2D tree like this one. If you want to, you can also enroll in our course. I will put it at the end of this tutorial so you can understand that we have also a 3D tree which you can control even more with Grasshopper. Okay, the last part is to give it a thickness. What I want to do is to first of all put a curve and pick up this line, bring it up here, and also another curve at the first, and with the shift key at this one. Remember to right click and flatten, so everything is going to go into one groups. Again, if you don't know about flatten and graft, watch the tutorial about data trees. And in the course, we have a complete section because we have talked about this before. So if you want to know more, you can also enroll in our course. Okay, so let's just do that and give this a little bit of thickness. If we want to give this a pipe from the surface, it's going to make it a little bit slow. So just check this out. You can see it's a little bit slow. But what I want to show you is to how we can change the thickness. If you want to do that, what we can do is to use the length of these lines as the indicator of the radius. So we can just say connect from the params menu a number. That's going to find the length of these curves. And then just use, this is a technique I always use, and give this a small multiplication that is really based on your project. So I'm going to give that 0.0025, I guess. Give that to the radius. Okay, increase that. For this project, I guess we have to increase the number of the multiplication. You can see how beautiful it is for this pipe. But if you want to make that faster, what I recommend is that to install a plugin, which I will also put in the website, which will give you the mesh pipe. So if I just select the curve and give that to the radius, and put the caps. You can see we don't need any caps, or you can just put it into flat if you want to. So I can put that caps into 1. In the right view, remember you have to go to the right view, not front view. You can change the numbers. It's really faster than the traditional pipe. And now we can just play with this. Check this out. We can play with this change of the angle, the length, and maybe the division. You can also add a number for the division, which this is going to make that more complicated, but you can say when the division comes in, I want to add this with a number. For example, when it's divided by 2, then I want 3 branches, then I want 4 branches, right? And then I want 5 branches. That's going to also make that a little bit complicated, but you have learned how to do that. Instead of multiplication, you have to add it, and you can do that for exercise. And you can see that we can simply play with these things and have the radius. Okay, I want a complete outline of this. So what I want to do, go to the intersection part and use this mesh plane tool. That's really cool. You can intersect this mesh with a plane which is basically a Y and a Z, right? So we can just say Z plane. Turn this off. Now you can see that we have these curves. Flatten that. And if I bake this, you can see that we have these boundaries. Now what we have to do is to unify them into one. So this is going to make it a little bit slow. In the shape of intersection, we have this here. Let me just go to red, which is region union. And we have to unite all of those curves in the plane. That's not really slow. It's going to give you the results. That's cool. Turn everything off. And that's beautifully done. A complete single polyline curve, your fabrication for art, for whatever you want. And if I just connect the surface to that, that's going to make that into a surface if you want to. And for now, we can just say that's it. And all right. Remember, if you change that, that's going to make it a little bit slower, but it's going to give you results. That's really cool. I love how Grasshopper updates everything. And then we can just simply bake that in Rhino. Close the results. We have it. That's really cool. And we can just go to the surface and give it a boundary to produce the surface. Because it's a polyline, it's going to take a while. Then we can extrude that in the X direction. That's a complete extruded thing. Let's go to the rendered and you can see that's the results. You can also check that out in the artistic view. And we have our Fractal Tree Generator, which helps us to produce that fractal, and it's really cool. Okay, that's how you can make this fractal tree in Grasshopper. Hope you like this video. Remember to like it and also share it with your friends. I guess it's going to help you with understanding how Anemone works and how you can work the loops out. That's really cool and great. And instead of this caps, you can also go with the round, but sometimes it's going to not give you results. But let's check this out. If I just give this a 2, and you can see it's making it slower, but you can see the results like that. And that's also cool. So remember, you can also play with that one. Okay, remember to like this video. Thanks for watching our channel. See you with our next tutorial. Bye.